If you want to go from this to that, we need a method to cut paper. There are lots of options: a razor blade and a straight edge, a fancy guillotine, a chisel and a vise, or a bookbinding plough. In this video, we will break this piece of equipment down. How is it constructed? How do you use it? How do you keep the blade sharp? And what are some techniques for best results? Not to mention, what types of paper can it cut, etc. Let's go into how best to cut stacks of paper in an efficient way. Okay, this is our book vise. It's made in the traditional sense using wooden screws. It has big jaws with angled sides. It's like a second pair of hands when working on bookbinding projects. Now, if you turn it around, you can see it has square sides and a groove. This groove is here to hold the plough. The plough has a blade secured to it, and once you secure your booklet in the vise, you advance the blade to turn the pages. This vise and plough is available in a building plan if you're interested, along with other bookbinding equipment such as our book press and sewing frame. When using the cutting plough, there are two main things to think about. First of all, to make sure that the blade is nice and sharp, and secondly, that the vise is secured properly so that there is no movement and you can go through the motion without any racking or any instability. First up, sharpening the blade. Here are the parts of the plough. So we have the main front section where we have an indentation carved out for the blade. Okay, we have smooth hole and two smooth holes. Then we have the secondary piece here. This has a track, a rail connected to it. This is threaded, so this is where the wooden screw connects, and these are smooth. We have a wooden screw with a handle, two small rods with a thicker collar, a blade. This is an old block plane blade and a screw. And this block plane blade obviously wasn't round initially. We brought it down using a grinder to remove the sharp corners. My favorite way to ensure this is to strop it several times throughout a session. So stropping is just leather and compound, and it just ensures that the blade stays sharp in between like bigger sharpening sessions with a stone. So we want to make sure that the edge here is super shiny and sharp. And then we have these, which will keep these from racking. It will keep this straight. So now we have our sharp blade here. If your protrusion here is a touch too deep, which is the case here. So if I put this down here now, it's not completely flush. So got our screw. When setting this up for the book plough, we want to make sure this is completely secure so nothing moves. First thing to think about, do you need to raise this up a little bit? How high is your book? In my case, I'm going to put a piece of wood just to make sure that I'm a little higher up so I have more room. So now I can work with a taller book. If I have a really tall book, I can add more height in between here. First thing I'm going to do is add a piece of wood here. We could just clamp this in place, or we can do the same type of thing here. It is squeezed in place, so there will be no movement. Okay, so this piece goes in this track right there. And now it can ride. It can move back and forth. Now, when setting up a book, the main thing is to have a support piece in the back. Here I'm using hardboard. You can use plywood or whatever you have. I use a piece both in the front and in the back. However, the back piece is what's really important. Place the line in the front here where I want to cut, level with the jaws of the vise, and then secure the book in place. Lining this upright is half the battle. And the creakiness, that's just the nature of wooden screws. Okay, dowel piece is the same one used to keep the plough straight, as well as what I use to open and close the vise. It's unnecessary to have 3 dowels if you can only use 2. My unit is secured, and now I want to do like even downward pressure. I'm holding on to this side right here. I'm doing slightly downward while I have my other hand on the screw, which I'll start farther out. I'll bring it back in a little bit until I actually hit the paper, and then we can start actually cutting. Now you can get a pretty good flow going here, as long as you keep that pressure stable. But just slowly advance, and then sometimes you feel like, oh, you went a little bit too far, like you're cutting too much, and you just back off a little bit, and you can kind of bring it back again. Once you've cut a few times, it's a good idea to stop and strop the blade. Now you don't have to take off the blade in order to strop it. It is nice, however, to disassemble this unit. Now I'm left with just a block with the blade on, my strap, and now I'll just do it like this. And the key is to find the angle and kind of here's a little notebook I'm working on, so we're gonna do all 4 sides. That was very, very nice. In terms of position, while you can stand in front of it and kind of hold it and do like this, it's a bit more awkward, and it's a lot easier if you can stand on the side, because that way you can, use your full range. Okay, so we have been cutting regular size paper. How about cardstock? How about something thicker? How would this cut that? So cardstock, no real difference from cutting thinner paper. How about something like cardboard? Well, that was fast. Well, I guess it makes sense. It's mostly air in here. What about something a bit thicker? 1¼ inches? Well, a thicker booklet is no issues. That turned out really nice. Different kinds of paper work fine. So far I've cut thin paper, thick paper, treated paper, like a different kind of feel, cardboard, large booklets, small booklets, thin stacks, thick stacks. I guess the thing to keep in mind is you can cut pretty much whatever you want in here. However, tougher things will dull your blade more quickly. So what if you built one of these ploughs, but you're not getting great results? Well, the first thing I would check is your blade sharp. Secondly, and this is an important one, is it secured properly? It's important that it's flush with the base. You don't want it to sit proud of the wood or inset. Also, if you're adding a little bit of paper to ensure a perfect fit, make sure it is even across, so the blade is not secured at an angle. That will give you a weird cut. And even really tiny changes here can affect the way this plough works. Otherwise, make sure your vise is properly secured, and when going through the motions of cutting, make sure to apply steady downward pressure while of course advancing the blade slowly. Also make sure your back back support of the book that you're cutting is substantial so that the paper has something to kind of lean against. If you forget this part, it doesn't work as well. Okay, let's say you're done cutting now and you want to put this away. So the first thing you do is disassemble Plough. Now you want to make sure you take off the blade each time and store it somewhere else. So I have a little box here where I'm putting it. Nice and protected. So let's say we don't need the vise right now and we want to disassemble this as well. So put the box out. Okay, now we have all the parts here, and these can be stored away, put under your bed, wherever. This wooden screw is a 1.5 inch, which is a pretty common size, easy to find. This wooden screw, I got to loan this tap and die set. This one is 2.5 inches, which is a very weird size, almost impossible to find. You can use a 1.5 size for these screws as well, or you can use metal screws if you'd like. I have all that laid out in the building plan as an option. Okay, let's say you watched this far, but you don't have a plough or a guillotine, but you still need to cut some paper. Okay, first method, razor blade and a straight edge. This is fine, especially if your book is not too thick. The thicker your booklet, the harder it is, in my experience, to keep everything straight and neat. Make sure to use a new razor blade and keep the pressure on the straight edge steady. So as you can see, it's a little jagged. Okay, what if you have a thicker booklet or you don't like the idea of a razor blade? Well, one option is to do it in your vise. If you have a bench and you have a vise and you have a set of chisels, we can replicate the idea of the book plough, but do it freehand. Basically just want to make sure we have some support and keep it nice and level. Now the issue with a square chisel is just that it is square and the edges tend to get caught. If you notice the blade we're using for the book plough, it is round. The blade used to be a block plane blade, and to round the edges we used a grinder and then a stone to sharpen it. You can do the same method with a chisel if you have one you wouldn't mind sacrificing and using solely for this purpose. Mark out your round corners and slowly bring down the edge on a grinder, making sure to keep the metal cool. Take breaks, or if it gets too hot you can dip it in water. Now you might be able to find a round blade to buy, however they are not easy to come by. But if you're doing this freehand, it certainly would be safer and neater to perform the task with a rounded blade. Although I do have to say, you doing it freehand, I do prefer having the handle of the chisel. It gives you a bit more stability than just holding on to the block plane blade. But the finished result here with the rounded blade is beautiful. I guess the thing is, if you want to be able to cut paper at home and get these really crisp results, I mean, you have a couple of options, but maybe a guillotine is not in your immediate future. Maybe it is too expensive, it takes too much space, and something like this is a bit more reasonable. It is a little bit more of a setup. It's not as fast as a guillotine, but the results, I would say, are pretty similar. Let me know if you have any questions in the comments below, if there was something that I forgot to address about this. If you're interested in picking up the plan, there's a link in the description below. And in the plan, you get the plan for both the vise and the cutting plough in one. So it's like 2 projects in one. I also have plans for the book press and the sewing frame if you want to set up your whole bookbinding studio, and also have a bundle plan with all of them for a discounted price if you are interested in that. So thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.